Welcome back, students. Today I have decided to discuss with you some of the poems of Robert Frost. As we all know that Robert Frost is a very famous, rather a representative American poet, and we can find the variety of themes in his poems like that are related to the modernism as well, and somehow we can find the traces of romantic poetry or imaginative poetry in his works. So, before starting the actual discussion, I want to have a little bit of biographical discussion about Robert Frost. Robert Frost basically belonged to a very humble setup. His father was a journalist, and he had a dream to become a very successful journalist, and he wanted to establish himself as a journalist in California, but he couldn't fulfill his dream, and he died when the two children, Robert and Jenny, were too young. So Robert Frost, on that time, he was too young, but he had to work for earning for his family. So he had a struggled life. He had to start working at a very early age in order to fulfill the family needs. So side by side, he started his career basically as a school teacher, and then as a farmer. He worked on the farms, and side by side he was writing poetry. I mean, he didn't publish the volume of his poetry at once, but his poems used to publish in the weekly magazines first, but later on, after the completion of his uh, degree, he just started publishing his poems, and we find the first volumes of his poetry published around 1914 and 1915. So this was something about some of the biographical informations about Robert Frost. Let's move to the discussion of his poems. The poems I have decided to discuss in this discussion are The Road Not Taken, Stopping by the Woods in a Snowy Eve. I think it's Stopping by Woods in a Snowy Eve, A Brook in the City. I think we will only be able to cover the first poem in today's discussion. So let's move to the discussion. The Road Not Taken. Apparently, it's a very common poem, a very simple poem, but when we just analyze the contents of this poem, we find that the narrator of this poem is confused. He's in a state of indecision because he is observing two roads. The two roads that could be followed make him feel lost in front of the difficult decision. These two roads lead into an enchanting and fascinating forest. So there isn't any clear destination at the end of both of these roads. So he had to decide to take the one. Now, when we just observe the scenery of the poem or the imagery of this poem, we find that the season that is shown in this poem is the season of autumn. Season of autumn is evident on the leaves of the trees and shows nothing is determined. Now, this very description shows that nothing is determined in human life, and at the end there is uncertainty, and there is only death as the certain thing. So on one way, we can get the idea that ignorance of future ills is a more useful thing than knowledge. Somehow we find Frost showing us this side of the argument in this poem. Well, one of the roads had better claim. It had something better about it. It was unfamiliar and less frequented, more alluring. But there was no real or apparent difference between both of these roads. So one of them seemed less traveled, but there wasn't any clear difference between both. They were equally mangled by vegetation. The poet liked experimenting new things. Means he wanted to explore some new things, and this shows the very common thing, the desire for the exploration of new things in human life. All of us, we want to uh, experience new things with each passing day. We like adventures. We have a quest for getting more and more knowledge. So quest for experimentation and adventure is evident in this very phase of the poem. Well, when he found the paths, there were no footprints of anyone traveling back on either of the leaves lay undisturbed. In the final stanza, as the tense changes to future, we hear a different story. And that will be told with a sigh in ages and ages hence. At the end, the tone of the poet sounds more serious and sounds extracting certain lessons of life, that life is a struggle. A life is meant to move on, to take decisions, and to take charges. So, uh, the first exposure of the poet with the selection of his ways was impulsive, but after ages and ages he has concluded that whatever way you just choose for your life, it makes the difference all about your future. I mean, your future changes or your future depends on your decisions. But at the end, the lessons he has extracted from that is that life is but struggle. By all means, you have to work for your goals, you have to struggle for that, and life is meant to move on. You have to take charges, you have to take decisions, and you have to move with them. Well, there are some of the chunks I have just collected in terms of the central idea or central ideas of this poem. They are the poet stands bewildered and muddled at the juncture of a forked road. He simultaneously wants to travel both. The less traveled road has appeal due to its greenery and fascination. He chooses the less frequent path after a prolonged state of indecision and hesitation. He has nothing to rue or regret. The poem shows the stream of life, that each and everything in life depends on our own decisions. There is no way out of this to comprehend the course of life. Again, the same thing, that life is unpredictable and life is meant to move on. And to take decisions and to take charges and to move on. Well, this is all about the poem The Road Not Taken. We will start another poem in the next video. If you like my videos, kindly like them, subscribe to my channel, and share it in your friend circle and in your community of students and teachers. Thank you so much for today. Allah Hafiz.